This episode of Excerpts from Experts is sponsored by Fred Arnold of American Family Funding. As a board member with Child and Family Center, Fred Arnold proudly supports the work our therapists and staff do to assist our community during these challenging times. Thank you for your support. If you would like to sponsor an episode of Excerpts from Experts, email our media team at mediateam@childfamilycenter.org.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode. We're going to be focusing on what to expect when you're going into mental health treatment. Today I have our guest Tanya Fator, licensed marriage and family therapist. Welcome, Tanya.
Thank you.
So Tanya, the month of July is Minority Mental Health Month. And when we start talking about what all of that entails, some of the topics that come up is stigma and some barriers that may prevent individuals from seeking treatment. So I wanted to talk to you about that today.
Well, there's absolutely many misconceptions about therapy, and one that is particularly damaging but very much still believed is the idea that only crazy people get therapy. That to me is equivalent of saying only people with broken limbs should see a doctor. Sadly, these type of messages continue to push people away from treatment.
I'm so glad you shared that because oftentimes mental health is not seen in the same way as physical health, but it is just as important. Taking care of ourselves really supports us in our functioning in our day-to-day. So when we talk about stigma and the misconception of therapy, what are your thoughts in terms of how should we view seeking help in therapy?
Therapy can be looked at as a way to self-care, just like when you care for the rest of your body, when you go to annual checkups. Our brain is a very valuable organ that needs to be cared for and frequently checked.
And so when we talk about, perhaps there's something going on in someone's life, when is a good time to seek therapy?
I think unlike what it is often believed, you don't have to be going through a disaster in order to seek therapy. It's absolutely okay to seek treatment at any point when a person feels the need to address any issue. In general, there are some significant milestones that may result in shifts in the way we feel, think, and behave. So it's good to consider seeking treatment when you or someone you know is going through these changes, particularly if you find you are struggling to adjust.
And kind of speaking to that, I imagine it'll be very different for someone who may be looking for help and they're younger, or maybe they have a 5-year-old child versus someone in their teenage stage or someone as an adult. So what might be some of the differences that someone may need to be ready for when seeking treatment in these different developmental stages?
There's a few things to look for, and I think the early years, for example, when children are transitioning from toddler to preschool, these are important just because children are experiencing significant changes in development, so it's good to keep an eye. Preteen and teen years is another stage of changes. Other transitions include starting college, becoming a parent, marriage, among others.
And going back to when we talk about stigma, and you've worked with so many families and parents and children throughout your career, and if a parent comes into the office and says, I'm so afraid that my child is crazy, what should I do?
It's very important to always maintain an open mind and just remember that mental health really has to be looked at as a way to care for your body. We can't separate our brain just like we can't separate our legs. It's just they're all together. It's all very much about looking at it in a very normal way. And that is key, I think.
Again, I love how you bring it back to the concept of physical health because it really is the same. And when we talk about seeking treatment for that first time, what might be some ways individuals can really get the most out of that treatment?
Being open-minded and willing to learn is a great key to success. Consider a workout routine. You can limit yourself to one activity, such as running, or you can expand to learn other strategies. Though it might be moving out of your comfort zone, if you're willing to try strategies, you will gain more out of everything.
And going back to being open-minded, when you first come into a therapy appointment, it's really a vulnerable experience, right? You're stepping in with someone that you've never met before and sharing some of the most personal and vulnerable aspects of your life, especially if there's been trauma and all of these other things. So in regards of, what to expect with that relationship with a therapist, what's some advice you can provide that individual in terms of what to expect when meeting with their therapist for the first time?
I believe one very important thing to look at is that therapy should be collaborative. So at times it is portrayed differently, but a therapist is not there to fix you or your problems, but instead to introduce strategies to help you problem solve, gain insight about behaviors as well as your strengths. You will have a team that will support you based on your level of need. So there are people who seek therapy and maybe it is just about their child's tantrum. So that therapist will work with you alone and maybe that is all that's needed. However, a person who perhaps is suffering from depression, anxiety, may need more support. So it is important to also look into that. There are different ways of helping the person and you will have different levels of support based on your need. I find it helpful to also remember that you are in control and the therapist is more of a guide.
And you bring up, I think, a commonly perceived myth about therapy is that when you go to see a therapist, they're there to fix you. And really, you as the client or the consumer, you're in charge. You're the one bringing in everything that you want support with, and you're leading that. It's not necessarily the therapist who is in that power position, and you're there to be fixed. It is you being the leader of that journey.
Absolutely. And I think that's very important because what you put into therapy is what you'll get back. And so if you only, you get strategies, you don't practice them, you go home and you completely forget what you talked about, then that's probably what you're going to get because the therapist is there to introduce and teach new strategies and ways of looking at things, helping you gain insight into problem solving, but they cannot do the work for you. So I think that's very important and it's also very powerful. You as a person are in control of changing and getting the outcome that you put into what you're doing.
I want to thank you for talking about this really important subject. We talked about how there's a lot of stigma that can really impact an individual's ability to seek treatment. And really, it's again looking at mental health like we do physical health. And just like it is going into a doctor, you may have a lot of feelings. You may be scared, you may be nervous. All of those are very typical feelings. And what you're sharing with us today is essentially, being open to those feelings and using therapy as a way to better learn about yourselves and better function with the problems or the concerns or barriers that may be in your life right now. Do you have any final thoughts or anything else you want to share in regards to individuals who may be seeking treatment for the first time?
I think it's really a good way to look at it that therapy is not there to change who you are, but instead to help you build a toolkit that will allow you to problem solve and bring out your potential to continuously grow.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Of course, we're going to be adding additional links and resources if you all want to learn more about what to expect when you're seeking mental health treatment for the first time. So thank you all for joining us. Have a great day.